What's your favorite scary movie? Well, mine's The Exorcist, but today we're going to talk about Scream. This one's going to be a fun one, guys, because behind The Exorcist, not too far, it's probably Scream is my second all-time favorite horror movie. And I don't think I'm alone in that one. There's a lot of fans of this movie and this franchise, and for good reason. Scream is one of those ones that you look back on as a genre-changing type of movie. I feel like its influence is seen all over the late '90s in movies that came after it. Scream came out 1996. You look after that at films like Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, even some of the later era Halloween movies like H2O and Resurrection. A lot of people would argue have Scream fingerprints all over them, and I would say you would be right. But Scream again came out December 20th, 1996. Written by Kevin Williamson. I believe this was one of the earlier, if not like the first full-length like screenplay that Kevin Williamson put together. I could be wrong about that. But directed by Wes Craven of Nightmare on Elm Street fame. Shout out Freddy. Uh, so pretty good guy to get on board, I would say, for a horror movie. And they knocked it out of the park with this one, I would say, at a time that horror desperately needed a movie to come and light a fire. I would say early to mid 90s horror was very much on its ass in a world of straight to video type B level, if we're being nice, horror movies. It was flat. The genre was flat. It was coming off of the 80s horror, which was, it was 80s horror, let's be real. I mean, everybody still remembers 80s horror extremely fondly. But very stagnant at the time, and Scream came along and was a shot in the arm that horror desperately needed. And at this point, we're coming on almost 30 years of Scream movies, coming up on a seventh film. Ghostface is an icon of Halloween and horror, so I mean, you can't argue what this movie accomplished. So let's get into talking about it. And first things first, I guess we'll start with the obvious, the opening scene, and what is probably the most iconic part of this movie. Got to be one of the greatest opening scenes of any horror movie ever made. I would say, for me, it's my favorite. One of those things where you've got, in a movie where Drew Barrymore, big star at the time, is starring in this movie, and she's in the opening scene, and I don't think anyone sees coming what happened, and it's where you have her being basically gutted within the first 10 minutes of this movie. I can't imagine what it must have been like to have experienced that in the current time. I was 4 when Scream came out, for reference, so I saw it a little later. But I can imagine you're watching, Drew Barrymore's in this movie, and within 10 minutes, Drew Barrymore is not in this movie. But anyway, it's a great scene from the start. I mean, it's incredible vibe. You've got this girl who's at home, she's making popcorn, she's about to watch a scary movie, waiting for her boyfriend to come over, and then all of a sudden you get just something as simple as a phone call, and things go south fast. One of my favorite parts of the opening scene is always kind of where the worm turns and things start to go south. And it's the moment where Ghostface is talking to Casey on the phone, and he says the line to her, "I want to know who I'm looking at." And she goes, "What did you say?" And he says, "I wanted to know who I'm talking to." But we all know what he said. And she knew what he said, because that's when she starts to realize, like, okay, something's not right about this guy. And that's when she starts trying to evade these phone calls, obviously. And then, obviously, things progress. We get to the point where she loses her patience and answers the phone with the "listen, asshole," and that's when Ghostface comes into full Ghostface mode, and we all know what happens. But that's where I'll take the moment to say one of my favorite parts about the original Scream movie, or any of the Scream movies, is Roger Jackson. The Ghostface voice is just, I mean, it's the part of these movies that, for me, makes these calls so ominous. And so I couldn't imagine any other voice at this point. Now that I've heard it as him and we know it as him, it's top notch. One of my favorite parts of the entire thing. But we get the first moment where he goes into Ghostface mode on the phone, and we start to play a game. And that whole thing is just so well played out. I mean, the way he toys with her on the phone, and the idea of just having something like that where you've got a crazy person toying with you and watching you from outside your house, and he wants to play a game asking you questions about horror movies, is just pure insanity. And then obviously the scene progresses, as we know, where eventually she realizes that the killer has her boyfriend tied up outside. Poor Steve. Things don't go well for Steve. Obviously, Steve is cut from the film pretty quickly. Once that happens, obviously, Casey's realizing things are probably not going to go very well for her either, I think. And we hit the point where she attempts to evade Ghostface once he busts her door in. And we get this cool little moment where she's kind of evading him through the house. We start to notice that the house is filling with smoke because she still has Jiffy Pop just going crazy on the stove. So there's all these little chaotic elements starting to go on in the scene that just make it so layered and where you feel a lot of tension watching it. And Ghostface, you start to see little glimpses of him running through the house, through little cuts of the hallways and things like that. And it's just kind of cool how they build up to this moment where eventually she's trying to sneak past the house and she's crawling past under a window, and she happens to look up and there he is. And that's kind of where they have their first little interaction, physically. And, as the scene progresses, we know Ghostface ends up attacking her and he's chasing her. And we get this awful moment where he attacks her and he's choked her and caused the point where she's been stabbed, she's been choked, and she can't really talk. And her parents pull into the driveway and they are within sight of her. She sees them right there. And it's just like come on type of moment. And again, makes you feel for the person on the screen. That's one thing Scream does really well, is make you buy into the characters to a point where like you don't just, like in a lot of other slasher movies, just go, this one just got fucking killed. Like you find yourself buying into them a lot more. So when you're watching this scene unfold that way, you're like, you feel for the girl. And so Ghostface obviously finishes her off. And then we get another of what is probably my second favorite, I would say, part of this opening scene, which is when the Mackenzies are in their house and they realize, obviously, something's going on. The house is filled with smoke. The fire alarm's going off. They can't find their daughter. The patio door's broken. All these things are amiss. And we get a moment where the camera comes back to Miss Becker at the front door, and we see her husband coming in from the patio area with this look on his face where we know he found Steve outside. He saw him. And he knows shit's not good. And it's at that point where we get a great little Easter egg where he tells his wife to go down the street to the Mackenzies, which for your Halloween fans out there, we know where that's from. And that's just a cool little thing that seems to go back and forth between the Scream franchise and Halloween, because I think we get it again in Halloween H2O where Laurie tells her son and his girlfriend to go down the street to the Becker's house. So it kind of gets paid back, which, horror nerds love shit like that. I'm horror nerds. I love shit like that. But so then we get the awful conclusion to the opening scene where her mother picks up the phone and she can hear the last couple of seconds of her daughter's life on the phone as she's being dragged across the yard to be hung across a giant tree limb. And they walk out front and we get that iconic shot of the mom and the dad witnessing Casey hung from the tree in what's I'm gonna call a not pretty picture. And I mean, again, what a way to introduce yourself to the horror world as a franchise. I mean, Scream, I don't think anyone's topping that. And then, from there, our movie progresses to where we start to get intro to some of our characters, which is another part of this movie that is top notch for me. I mean, they're some of the most, well done characters, I would say, in all of horror. You get Neve Campbell, for starters, who top final girl in horror for me. I don't think you can argue too many people that are better than her, especially over the span of at least I'll say for sure the original trilogy. The performance she puts on as Sydney in those 3 movies is phenomenal. People can argue what they want about 4 and 5 and all that. For me, I still say she's the GOAT. But we get introduced to her sitting in her bedroom after this, and not long after, her boyfriend, Billy, makes his first appearance, which is what I will say is going to be the first sign of my only negative with the Scream movie. If I have to, because I have to be somewhat fair and point out a negative throughout this at some point. My only negative I have about the first Scream movie is that they do tend to telegraph, at least for me, who the killers were. And you get your first bit of that with this first scene where Billy sneaks in her window, and you get the first example of him being obsessed with movies. And he's telling her about watching The Exorcist, and he's finding these ways to compare real life to horror. And that's example one. We'll come back to that point, my negative. And then, so we get through this scene, and it's a pretty, stock introduction, boyfriend, girlfriend scene type of thing. You kind of learn a little about their relationship and, where they are and stuff. And then we progress to what I'm going to say is our next big, like, character moment, where you meet everybody sitting around the water fountain at school. And this is where we kind of come back to another point where I feel like there's some telegraphing of who's responsible here. And you even get Randy kind of call it out too. I mean, he basically asks Stu, if he's responsible in this scene. But you get Stu, though, also making himself extremely obvious with talking about how you gut a person and how it takes a man to do this and all of these things that just make him way too obvious, to the point where Billy has to basically give him the Iggy, like, hey, shut your mouth. Which, if that's not suspicious, I don't know what the fuck is. But anyway, that doesn't take away my enjoyment of this movie whatsoever, I will say. But, then we also get introduced in this same scene, again, to Randy, who Randy's another great character of these movies, because he's all of us. He's a horror nerd that's just like me and you. He's somebody you can root for, and you definitely don't want to see get killed. We get introduced to Tatum here, who is Dewey's sister, as well as getting to kind of see how they all interact with each other as a group of friends. From there, the movie kind of progresses as you would expect in something like this. It's a little bit of a slow build, and you're kind of building some questions about, who's doing this. You're learning more about Sydney's backstory with what's happened to her mother. And, there's a lot of layers to that onion that make you really feel for Sidney Prescott as a character. I mean, she's realizing that she's starting to be targeted by a serial killer who is making references to her mother only a year after she lost her mother to a heinous type crime. So we can only imagine what this girl is going through. And then she's going to school on a daily basis and dealing with bitchy kids that are talking shit about her when they don't think she's around in the bathrooms. And, there's a lot of stuff going on that just makes you really feel for Sidney Prescott. And as that's all progressing through the second act or whatever of this movie, you get to the point where you get the reveal of Ghostface, quote unquote, where you have her first attack at the house, and Billy comes in the window and he drops his cell phone, and oh shit, Billy's the killer. So she realizes, oh my gosh, my boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. So now another layer of just trauma to this girl that she's going through. So we get the awesome moment where she's leaving the police station after she basically fingers Billy as the guy and all of this. And we get the great moment where she punches Gale in the face out back, which for me is great because I may be in the minority on this little side tangent. I've never been a Gale fan. And if Scream 7 kills Gale, I'm not going to be sad about it. There, I said it. But, we get the great scene where she gets punched, I'll send you a copy. Bam. And then from there, we transition to where Sydney is at Tatum's house. She's staying the night there. And again, full-on trauma mode as she's going through all this shit. And now her boyfriend is the killer. And then we get another phone call. It's not your boyfriend. At least she thinks. So not only are we a year removed from traumatic death of mother, we're being stalked by a serial killer who is making ties and connections to said mother. Oh shit, the serial killer is my boyfriend. Oh shit, the serial killer is not my boyfriend, and I just put my boyfriend in jail for no good reason. Fuck, man, this girl is having a rough go. So, fast forward, Billy gets out of jail, sees Sydney in school. They have their whole little interaction, it wasn't me, you gotta move on, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, we get to a point now where school is about to get cut out because there's a serial killer on the loose. So, yay, Sydney. Yay, everybody loves Sydney. Thank you for being stalked by a serial killer. So we're about to set up our third act of this movie, which is outside of the opening scene. I would say the third act and the opening scene, probably your most iconic parts of this movie. I will say there are some cool parts in between. Like, I'm a big fan of the fact that Linda Blair gets her little cameo appearance as the bitchy reporter that's demanding Sydney to talk about what it's like to almost be butchered, as a big Exorcist fan. anytime you get her in there, I'm going to be a fan of that. And then the Fonz. I mean, come on, we get the Fonz. Henry Winkler being in the movie is just great. Um, it's always cool when he opens the closet and you see the leather jacket hanging there. I'm sure that was an intentional nod to the Fonz. And then Wes Craven having his little cameo as the janitor dressed up like Freddy Krueger is something you got to enjoy as a horror fan too. So, a lot of cool little moments throughout the middle of the movie that give you some cool things, and then a lot of just little nods to cool little horror shit throughout. I mean, all the Halloween references, the Wes Carpenter moment, and then for some reason I don't know why they felt to send a random shot at Richard Gere, but he just can't outrun that gerbil thing, I guess. So now we get to the third act of the movie. Your classic teenage party setting, right? And we're at Stu's house, which, side tangent, incredible looking house. My God. I mean, if you could give me that house, I'd be a happy fucking camper. But anyway, I'll stop house envying right now. So third scene of this sets up as, teenage party, a lot of drinking, a lot of debauchery, I'm sure, going on. All the things you're not supposed to be doing if you listen to Randy and you follow the rules. But, what are you going to do? Temptation, temptation, temptation. But anyway, so we get to our climax of the movie. Billy comes to the party after what I can only imagine is him offing Tatum in the garage. Poor Tatum. Rest in peace. Must have been cold in that garage. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So Billy comes in, and it's time to go make up with Sydney. So they go upstairs, and they have their lovely moment together. All much to Randy's dismay. Poor Randy. Geek never gets the girl, unfortunately. After that, we are greeted by Ghostface entering the room to spoil the lover's moment as he goes in and what we believe is unalives Billy. Poor Billy. Fortunately, it was just ketchup. Sydney is then chased all through Stu's crazy ass fucking incredible house to the point where she eventually ends up upstairs being chased through a weird ass room where Stu's got all kinds of weird little voodoo dolls hanging from the room and shit. I don't know what's going on in there. Stu was a weird character. Eventually, we have a wild ass chase scene. She falls out of a window. It's chaos, just wild chaos. There's a cool scene where she ends up getting chased into the police jeep, and there's the cool little moment with the unlocking of the doors, and he eventually comes in and gets her from behind. Cool little moment there. A lot of cool little moments in this final act. The tape delay thing with the news van and all of that. Ghostface showing up right behind him, and So just a lot of cool moments throughout this third act that I could go on ad nauseum about, but kind of try to get to the point of it here. We get to the reveal. So Sydney's being chased back into the house, and Randy and Stu both coming after her. But Sydney's not trusting either of these guys, so she slams the door in their face, and so, no, y'all scram. But that's when, surprise, oh wait, well, it's not that part yet. Billy's alive, and here he comes bumblefucking down the steps, takes the gun from Sydney, opens the door, lets Randy inside. Randy comes in, Stu's gone mad. We all go a little mad sometimes. Dun, 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 and fucking boom. Shoot Randy. Fortunately, wasn't my boy's time yet. But that's when Stu must have also just made his way back around the house, because he comes in the side door of the dining room and surprise, Sydney. Of course, we had to have a friend, right? So the next few minutes proceeds to just be these two chuckle fucks going absolutely insane and terrorizing Gail, Randy, obviously, and then telling Sydney all about their crazy ass fucking plan, why they did it, and all of this shit. Which is where we get a pretty cool part in this final act with Stu, where he's standing behind Billy as he's explaining his motive for why he's doing all this. And he's telling her, well, your mom slept with my dad, and that's why my mom left. And Stu is standing behind him, and his face changes completely when he hears this. He's going from just like, I'm just fucking having a good crazy time, to kind of like surprised, taken back by it, as if, he's like, oh shit, you had a motive? I'm just kind of in this for the chaos. I just always thought that was kind of a cool part there. It makes me like Stu even more. Another reason I like Stu even more is what I've heard is an improv line. I'm assuming that's the case. It's been peddled about so much, I'm assuming there's some evidence to this. But the "you hit me with a phone, dick" every time I hear that, it cracks me up when I watch the movie. Classic. That and the "my mom and dad are going to be so mad at me." Yeah, I'd imagine probably so. At this point, obviously, that's where Sydney has foiled them up, found a way to, kind of get over on these two idiots. She managed to hide herself in a closet where she ends up coming out and attacking our boy Billy. Stabs him with, I think it's an umbrella or something of that nature. I'm not exactly, something fucking weird. And then you get our boy Stu, who gets his with the whole TV over the head. That's how he dies. And then obviously Gail makes her triumphant return and gets handy with the steel. Saves the day a little bit there. And we get a funny little moment at the end where you gotta kind of make fun of it a little, where they're talking about, this is the moment where the suspected to be dead killer comes back for one last scare. Not in my movie, but it definitely still happened in your movie. So that's always funny. And, but our boy Randy makes it. He survives. Dewey survives. So we get a pretty good surviving cast, all prepped and ready for our sequel. And, yeah, so, I mean, we're definitely going to follow suit. We're going to cover Scream 2 next. But as far as the ending of this one goes, man, I know there's a lot of details we're not talking about here. We could go on for hours talking about this movie. But, again, just to sum it up, a classic. One of those movies that stands the test of time, defined a generation of horror. And it's as a franchise, Scream is gotta be the most consistent top, first movie to last movie in the slasher genre. As much as I love my boy Jason, there's some rough Friday the 13th movies to sit through. And same thing about your boy Freddy. I know there's a lot of you diehard Freddy fans out there that don't like to hear that shit, but there's some rough Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm fucking talking about you, Dream Child. Whew. But Scream 1 to 6 is solid movies. I mean, people like to knock 3 for what it is, but I think it's a great movie. 6 is my personal least favorite, but even that, I mean, up until the third act is a great movie. It's just kind of pisses me off a little bit in the third act. Not my favorite Ghostface reveal, but that's for another review. But yeah, that's pretty much it on this one. Scream, for me, if I had to rate it, it's 5 stars. I mean, great rewatch value. I'll go back and rewatch that movie 100 times and it will not get old. Absolute classic. So yeah, gonna look forward to reviewing Scream 2. Keep an eye out for that, and thanks for checking this one out. Appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit. Help the channel, and appreciate you guys. See ya.